Hi, my name is Tracy, and I am an author and a speaker. I'm so excited to have soulful conversation today with you all.
Good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the
So in the meantime, I want to introduce you to my dear friend Tracy Boone and I'll tell you a little bit about Tracy. Tracy and her young son Elijah thought they had lost their happily ever after when Reed, Tracy's husband and Elijah's dad, passed away. Tracy was left a widow and Elijah was left fatherless without his hero. Although fighting the brain diseases Reed had was difficult, Tracy realized that the healing process might even be more difficult, especially for her young son of 6 years. Sadly, she was right. Tracy found that for most new widows, that support and resources are difficult to find and hard to navigate. When a woman becomes a widow, her whole world changes right before her eyes. Family and friends often struggle not knowing what to say and not knowing how to support. And that journey can be lonely. The program that she's created has helped others take a look at themselves and see the areas that they need to work on. They have learned to cast their cares upon their Father in heaven and know that He has set them free from within. So, Tracy, I'm so excited to have you on today to talk about your journey and your story and also about your son. And I know you've got some amazing things upcoming. So, we're going to talk about all that today. But I thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing this. It's a tough story to share. I mean, as a mom who lost her son 3 years ago, almost July, talking about our grief, it's hard because I feel sometimes people they don't want to listen. Like sometimes you feel like it's a burden to them, and so having a circle of those that understand us and can relate is so important.
Oh, it is so huge. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of people don't know what to do. And I've met so many that said, "Well, I don't even know what to do with your son. What do I even say to him?" I said, "Just talk to him." That's the best thing you can do is just acknowledge it and say, "Hey, how you doing?" But I
Yeah.
think people just avoid it because they really don't know if they want to make it worse. You know,
I agree. Yeah.
you know.
And so we're going to dive into a lot of that. We're going to unpack some of that. But before we do, I want to know a little bit about you. There's one thing. So if you're new to the show, I don't have questions set out. I don't send out questions. If somebody wants that, they're not the right fit to be on my show. But I always have one question. And if you watch our show or you listen to our show, you know what the question's going to be. And that is, I want to know about what Tracy, as that little girl, what did she want to do when she grew up, and how does that compare to what you do today? So, like for
Oh,
instance, I'll give myself as an example. Growing
right.
up, I was like, I want to be a teacher. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. Where I went to high school, we had the opportunity to have like a work program where I would leave school and go over to the elementary school, and I got to be a teacher's assistant. Unfortunately, my parents and my school did not have good guidance on getting us to those next steps. But I laugh and say, I've done the school of hard knocks. I've, taught myself so many things. And then here I am, I'm coaching. And I always laugh. I go, if I think about it, I'm probably coaching those women I would have had in elementary school. I just got them in midlife now. And
Yeah.
so I'm
Perfect
certified and all that
job.
stuff. But so it's really funny how that correlates. And so tell us like what was Tracy, little girl Tracy, like, and what did she want to do when she grew up, and what's that like today for you?
You know, when I was growing up, being an airline stewardess was a big thing because you got to travel everywhere and it was, I don't want to say glamorous, but yeah, and it was like you got to go drive, go fly and be an adventure in the world and just go and see places and do things and meet amazing people. I always thought that was something that I would do. And it was interesting when you were asking me that question. I'm looking at this eagle behind me going, and he's soaring, and that's one of the big things that I teach is how to soar in life above the circumstances, right? And so I'm actually kind of doing that, but in a different way, like you said. So I thought that was pretty awesome when you were asking me that question.
It's so funny. That's one of my bucket list jobs I wanted to have was to be an airline stewardess. And in my late of life, when my kids were heading off to school, out of school, and I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. I started researching online. It's like Oh,
No.
I can't do it because I have tattoos. Like you can't have tattoos. I don't know if it's changed now, but I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just travel. What the heck, you know? So it's so funny, but yeah, it's so cool how you are soaring now. And you and I've talked before, and you know, and so we're gonna talk. If you're listening to us, we are gonna touch on some things that might be heavy, and you know, if it's something that is heavy in your heart, you want to learn more about how you can talk to Tracy and or myself, you can just reach out to us in the comments below and we can certainly connect you. All our contact will be in the show notes as well if you're reading or watching. But so take us back, you know, your son was 6 years old, you were saying. And I remember, you know, when Matt passed, like we were talking at the beginning of the show, like people was like, I don't know what to say. And I literally would look at them and go, that's okay. Just tell me that. I don't want you to come in and be like, oh, asking what happened and oh, you know, we heard this or, you know, I don't
No.
know. I don't want you to. In fact, when our family, like, so when Matt passed, we found out by the news. We didn't get the knock at the door. Nobody
Oh,
came
wow.
to our door. There's many layers of there. For those that have been watching and listening to my show, we do believe that unfortunately the police officers that were on the scene were held some pre thoughts because of his race and how they're going to handle the situation. And
Mm.
so we found the news. And so it was, and if I had not heard on the news, I literally, the news came on. I looked at it and thought, that looks like my car. We had talked to Matt just before he passed. And unfortunately, he was making the mistake of drinking and driving. And so I literally called the morgue. And the morgue is not covered by HIPAA. And they literally didn't even ask me who I was and confirm that he was there. Had I not done that, the phone call I got like after like as quick as I'm saying that's how fast the scene started happening. The next thing my phone rings and it was from the organ donation and want because Matt was an organ donor and want to know about donating his corneas. And I was like, I can't talk to you. Like literally, I just found out, right? And so
Right.
I remember all that stuff like going through and you know, I called my friend. She literally was here like she lives 30 minutes away almost. She was here like I think I felt like 10 minutes, but it was, you know, going through all that, it's like people want to ask you, I'm like, when all our family was arriving, because it was just the four of us, just my two boys and my husband and I, and then Matt and Nate have girlfriends at the time. And so I literally, when everybody came, because people like they don't want to cry in front of you and things like that. I'm like, could you please cry in front of us? We are creating this safe space like right from the get-go. It kind of like my coaching hat was sort of still on. I was like, I need you to not hold back the tears
Right.
because
Exactly.
then you make it more comfortable for me to cry and I don't want you to worry about me because I'm crying, you know? And so that's hard. And so and then you know, kind of, you know, Matt was our son. We had to go tell our son Nate. That was harder because he'd just gotten apart with his girlfriend, and we never just show up at our kids' place. We always make time, you know. And I told my husband, not that Nate was on social media, but I was like, I don't want him to hear it somewhere else because by now it's on the you know it's on the news. Who knows, you know. And so, and by that afternoon, they named him in the newspaper. Still nothing at our doorstep. And
Oh
so
my
we show up
gosh.
at Nate's
Wow.
door, and he's like, "Why are you guys here?" And that was the hardest thing to do, you know. So I can't imagine like telling a 6 year old child that their father has passed away. Like I can't imagine having to go to Nate and tell him that my husband's passed, you know, and then at 6 years old on top of that. So
You
walk
got an
us
amazing
through how
story.
some of that,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Walk us through how
Well,
that
yeah, it was really a sad story because Reed was the epitome of health. I mean, we owned gyms together, and we were a couple that, and our family owned three very large fitness facilities, and we believed very wholeheartedly about taking care of yourself and self care, and that we have a responsibility to do it. But it's also such an amazing thing. You can't do anything better for yourself than to take care of yourself and for your family. I call it putting the oxygen mask on yourself before your kids, right? And you can't give out what you don't have. So start with you. And so, you know, going through this, my husband at age 1 with my son, I started noticing changes in his body. And he literally took a shot in the 1970s from a doctor. He was a professional athlete, and he took a growth hormone, but he went to the doctor to be safe, and it ended up being the very thing that killed him decades later. It gave him a thing called the decades disease, which I never say this right. Creutzfeldt Jacobs disease is what it's called. Um, and it's a form of mad cow, and it went up to his brain and started digging out his brain from the inside out. And so decades later, it started affecting his reasoning and understanding because there was absolutely nothing there by the time he passed. But we didn't know he started to deteriorate. So my best friend turned into my worst enemy in the home, and I'd already been with him for 15 years, and so all this stuff started happening, and it was very scary. But I also knew that he was in trouble. Every day his body was changing and things, and we were business partners, and it was just one of those messes, right? And I tell you, my faith kicked in because that's the only way I made it through this process. But then we're talking about when I actually lost him. 2 weeks before he died, the person or the amazing doctor that found out what was wrong said he has 2 weeks to live. And that's basically what happened. And he escaped from hospice 3 times. They were like, we're not set up for this. And the doctors apologized to me, going, oh my gosh, we didn't know what we were dealing with because there's just not a lot to know about this. And they have his brain and they're studying it out. We donated his brain so he could help with this. But that night that he passed, at 11 o'clock, my phone rang. And what was interesting, God is so good. What was interesting is my phone rang and it was Reed calling me. Well, he was in hospice and I was at home with his older kids, and we were, I was caring for them, and they got to say goodbye to their dad and they had their moment, and then they lived in another state. And so my 6 year old and I saw the phone ring and it was Reed calling my phone. Well, that was impossible. First of all, he was unconscious. And second of all, his phone was in my safe upstairs. And so I knew that was like a God wink saying, you need to go. It's time. And so I went and I had my time to say goodbye, as you know. Well, I don't think that's probably not correct. But when you go through a process like I went through, it wasn't sudden like you. And I'm so sorry, first of all, let me say that I'm so sorry that you went through that. Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine. Um, I can imagine, but I can't know exactly how you feel. That's what you say to somebody, by the way. I don't know. I can't imagine, and I can imagine, but I absolutely do not know completely how you feel. But I'm here for you. That is one thing to say, okay? When somebody's going through it, and don't ignore them. I'm going to tell you, a widow, the first year of their life loses her entire community. They stop calling you. They stop taking you to dinner because that other person's not there. It's horrendous. Don't do that. Continue to take them to lunch. Stay in fellowship with them, okay? So anyway, we go to hospice, and my little 6 year old says, I'm going with you. And when my son was little, he would pop up on his elbow like this when his dad was talking to him. I'm telling you this for a reason. And when his dad was telling him something important, he'd go like this and he'd listen to him and he'd take it in, right? And he was listening intently. Little guy, right? And so we went to hospice, and he went and sat in a chair in the corner, and I can give you a picture of it if you want to show it to your viewers. I don't know if that'll work or not, but he's sitting in the chair, and he fell asleep in the room. So that's the setup. I had my sister, and not my sister, but Sandy, my assistant, and my mother was sitting at the foot of the bed. And what happened next was I said goodbye to Reed. I had my time and I fell fast asleep until about 3 in the morning. And then about 3 in the morning, um, my mom and again Sandy were sitting at the foot of the bed, and this bright light, I kid you not, goes over my son, coming down like a beam, and then a space right to the right of him. Okay, and I'm telling you this for a reason. And my mom got a picture of it. And what happened is his arm came up, my son's arm came up like this. So my mom knew that, and she said, oh my gosh, something's happening. We don't know, but something is, and it's important, and it was just a heart-wrenching time for all of us. And so it goes away. I wake up and we go home, and the kids were getting ready to leave. So I said goodbye to them. It was about 5 in the morning. And then I went and laid down with my son and we went to sleep. This is 2 days before Christmas. So it was just one big hot mess, right? It felt like it. And then about 2 hours later, I get a phone call and they tell me that Reed had passed. And so I get up, Elijah stays there with my dad, and we head off to hospice to do the arrangements. And I'm sitting in front of him, kind of going, oh my gosh, and it hits me. How am I going to tell my kid he's gone? Because we had been believing that he's going to be healed and all this stuff. And how do you tell your 6 year old that your dad is gone? And I'm like, I have one shot to do this right. I even got tears in my eyes even thinking about it. And so all the way home, I'm going, God, you've got to tell me, you got to help me here because this is hard. And I get home, and then our bedroom's at the top of the stairs. And so I had to go into the house, and it felt like, when you walk on an escalator backwards, it felt like I was going up an unending amount of stairs. And I kept walking and kept walking, going, whew. And I get to the top of the stairs, and I go in and I pick up my little boy and I put him on my lap. I had a couch in my bedroom. And I looked at him and I said, buddy, I need to tell you something. And he's kind of, opening his eyes, and I was waiting for him to wake up. And I said, I need to tell you something. And he says, what, Mom? I said, Daddy went home to heaven. He died. You're supposed to be very specific with little kids because it scares them about moving or passing on. So you have to be very specific. Daddy died last night or this morning about 7 o'clock. And he looks at me and he says, you never, he goes, what time, Mom? And that's not quite what you expect when you're telling your kid this. What time, Mom? And I said, about 7 o'clock this morning. He goes, no, Mom. Daddy died last night at 3 o'clock in the morning. I saw him. He told me he's okay. He looks amazing. And I got to see him go home to heaven. There was angels all around him. Can I have a donut? And he gets up and he runs off. And I went, oh my gosh. God knew I needed this before I even knew I needed this. And he
That,
already took care of it ahead of time. And I was
yeah,
like,
that's so beautiful. It's like,
wow.
yeah. Yeah,
And
it's so beautiful. You were
it's
talking about knowing. It's interesting how you said that because Matt had butt dialed us the night before, the night, like I said, about 20 minutes before he passed. He had butt dialed us and he knew drinking and driving was a big thing for me. Matt had gone through rehab. He was doing really, really well. And this one night I think him and his girlfriend probably just got in an argument. We love Brittany to death. She's part of our family. We know they would have got married. She's our daughter-in-law now, and she had a little girl before Matt met her, and he loved Evie like she was his own. And so they had a disagreement, and he left, and unfortunately, in the state of Florida, there's nothing. The bottom line, Matt made the choice to drink, but there should have been people that could have stopped him from getting behind the
right.
wheel of a
No,
car,
I
and they
under
did not do that. But he butt dialed us, and I told my husband, "You got to call him back." And I call back, and he's like, "Mom, I swear, I have an Uber. It's right outside." And I was like, "Okay." And then I called his girlfriend. She's like, "No, the car's not here." And he had my car. He had my car because he used it for their business that my husband and him did.
yeah.
And so I was sitting there, and we have a sectional couch, and my husband sits at the end, and he has his own like recliner, one of those. He had bad hips, so it's one that helps him get up and down out of the chair. He's great now. He's got hip surgery done, but I usually sit right next to him. And this night I got up and I sit at the opposite end of normally where I sit. I never sit in that spot. And I was sitting there and I was just shaking like a leaf. And I'm like, something's wrong. Something's happened. Like I knew something's happened. And my husband's like, you're going to have a heart attack. I'm like, this is not a heart attack. And if he was sitting here, he'd tell you, I wouldn't have believed it till I saw it. And I
Hmm.
like literally, I knew like he passed and I could feel that peace and everything that happened. But I kept thinking and hoping, I didn't understand it at the moment, but when we went back and looked at the phone, all the timing and everything is exactly that timing. And so you're right. I mean, we know, and it's interesting because Matt and I we had this connection, and Matt was born of our heart. So we adopted Matt when he was a month old.
Oh,
And we just grew this connection right away. My husband, we were stuck in California, so Chuck was back home in Virginia. So I was at Matt for the first like probably 6 weeks of what we had him. So we built this really cool connection. And he was very empath like I was. Like we could feel things, talk things. And he had this blue chair. We had this blue chair downstairs, and he always would sit there and he would have this insightful conversations. But one of the conversations he would always have with us is he would tell us, I don't want to say this, but I feel like I'm not going to live past 25. And I would say, don't say that. Don't put that out
right.
there. He's like, Mom, I'm not trying to put that out there. I just have this feeling because I don't know what it is. And he passed at 25 years old, 2 weeks after his 25th birthday. And so I'm always about, man, don't manifest that stuff, please, son.
Right. No,
But,
I'm in
but
agreement with you on that. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I think for those that are listening, like if you get those moments or those gut feelings, I always have to follow them. Don't push them down. Go follow them because you don't know what's happening. You don't know what you can change. You don't know who you can
Yeah.
help, like all that stuff. And I like what you
For a
said too,
reason. Yeah.
like yeah, and what a beautiful thing for your son to take that and have that moment with him and be like, Daddy's okay. He's not, he's not in pain anymore. And and I appreciate what you said too, because the people don't think before they speak about comments, and I always give grace. I met one of my really dear friends. We both said we wish we never met in this club that we're in together with losing our
Oh, I
child,
get it.
because she
Yeah.
sat with me at the funeral home. She works for the funeral home, and so one of the things that I do now, and it's sad, but in our circle of Matt's friends, he just before he passed, and since he's passed, there's been at least 8 people in his circle of friends that we know that have passed on at these young ages, and and so I always say, like, what do you tell me, God? And so I. I feel like my calling is that I'm in the middle of getting certified for grief coaching, but just the other day, from his same school, a couple weeks ago, a young girl from our local, the same school Matt went to, and he played football. She was a cheerleader. She passed away, I believe, in an accident too. I don't know the details, but the one thing a friend of mine did, and it was so amazing because people bring all this food, and they come up and all this fellowship, and it's so beautiful. But all of a sudden, I opened my door, and my friend had dropped off all these paper goods. Like, I think about that, right? It was like she thought outside of the box about how can I help? And I say that to think outside the box. So now when I hear of somebody who's like, I went yesterday and I dropped off a bag of paper goods to this mom and dad, and I wrote a note in there that, our journeys are different. We're in this circle together. If you need help, if you need somebody to talk to, just sit or whatever, because the thing is it's okay just to say, I don't know what to say. And that's okay.
That's
And
the
like,
best thing to say.
that is the best thing to say.
Yes.
And like you were saying too, like that first year, it's like that. There's a friend of mine locally, she lost her husband, I think it's been about a year. And I've watched her talk about that, how all of a sudden, those circles kind of go away, and the people go away and they're afraid it's like you're afraid to talk. It's like, I want to hear the memories you have. Every year, Matt's birthday, he passed 2 weeks after his birthday. So every year on his birthday, we gather at his graveside and we bring pizza and we have a little, we tell his friends, come meet us, and we have a little mini birthday party. And I remember it was so funny. The first year we did it, they share these stories, and it's funny to hear the stories that your kids create about you that they tell their
I
friends,
know.
And I was sitting there going, no, that really was not about me. And they like, he said, you just said it was your friend because it really was you. I'm like, no, I did not do that. That really was a true story. And I chuckled, as we're sitting there, I'm chuckling at him going, you're down there believing that. Look at, I'm going to heaven. But I say all that because, like, I do. Somebody just asked the other day, like, do you see signs? Do you feel signs? I'm like, I see them all the time. I know when he's visiting me. I mean, his blue chair is downstairs. I don't think I'll ever get rid of that blue chair because I know when he comes and he just sits in that blue chair. And it's like, I know he's probably watching around, And like I said, when he passed, my husband he needed to have hip surgery, and Chuck kept saying, oh, I don't need surgery, and I kept saying, yes you do, and Matt kept saying, yes you do. And so earlier this year he had the hip surgery, and we're now going on a cruise to Greece in August. So
Oh,
I'm really
awesome.
excited in fact, when this releases, we'll be just heading
You'll
out
be
to
there.
our cruise.
Oh,
And
that's a
so we're
place
going on
I've
this
always
cruise, and
wanted to go. Oh
oh,
my
and he
God.
wanted to see us do these things. So, now we're doing these things. And so it's a beautiful thing to have those memories. Of course, I wish it was here, and things like that. But tell us, like what led you to the path of what you're doing today to help, like, your son and other ones like this to walk this journey that we're on.
Well, it was interesting. So when I went back to hospice and I saw the therapist there, I knew we needed help because I knew we were in, I don't want to say we were in trouble, but we were a shell of people with what we experienced because we had a very severe case of PTSD because, it was left undiagnosed. And so we endured a lot because it wasn't under control whatsoever because they didn't know what it was. And so we were dealing with a lot at home. And so it was kind of like grief and trauma were crashing in. That's what it feels like. And it is two separate things and it has to be treated as so. Sometimes you have to put the trauma on the shelf and deal with the grief. And then you got to put the grief on the shelf. So it's a very big thing to navigate. And so I felt like this war going off inside of me. And I'm going, oh my gosh, if I'm feeling this way, I can only imagine what my 6-year-old's feeling, right? And so I didn't think that I just couldn't see my son sitting in an office talking about it. but we were involved with horses in our lives. And so interesting enough, I always said it, interesting enough, this hospice nurse, or not her nurse, but therapist, like it was almost like slow motion. She kind of gave me a stack of brochures and I saw it kind of hitting my hand and it kind of just went slow motion into my hand like that. And I went, oh my gosh, this is now my life. And in that moment is why I'm doing this today, because I never want anybody to feel so alone and not know how to navigate when they're going through something, not just grief and loss, but trying to find their way in this life and the truth in their life and how to get where they're going. And there's just so much to it, but never to feel alone again. All right. And interesting enough, in those brochures was a man and a horse. And I said, we can do that. And so we started out on this journey and we would go out to the arena and we started working on things. And out of that has now, I have a thing called, it's my shirt, it's Holy Spirit led Equestrian Fellowship. And we have a new book out called Angels in the Arena. I'm so excited about this. This has been over 3 years of development and research and living my own path out of this. And so my son and I came out of it. We did use obviously, other things that we needed as we went along the way and God led us to do. But now we have a horse named Star and another horse named it's another horse named Shiloh, who actually just passed this last winter. She was a senior and she broke her leg. And so I had another loss, but we now have a new horse named Ace, and his name means united, or yeah, united and one. And so it's really a cool thing. But we have a 12-week program now where you can go through this process. And the first one is peace. The whole thing is establishing peace in your home and in your heart so you can actually live and start the healing process. And how do you do that? Well, we show you how to do that. And it is such an important thing for your home. Peace in your home. That's the one place on this earth that you can go and just rest and have that sanctuary. And it needs to be guarded as such, right? And so to have peace in your heart and in your home, and then teach your kids how to do it. Elijah, a lot of times, would have these things called grief bursts. And that's what, if you've ever experienced grief, and I'm sure you felt this, right? All of a sudden you feel this freight train coming through and you're like, oh my gosh. Well, it actually is called a grief burst. Okay. And what it is that you're overwhelmed and your body's overwhelmed because your brain is constantly looking for that person you're missing because they're not there. And so it becomes overwhelmed. They even say that your brain is swollen during this time. I call it the first year, the deer in headlights year, because it's how it feels. I'm sure you somewhat agree with that. You're just kind of like, what happened and now what, right? And then the second year is the marathon. Um, and so anyway, a lot of times my son would start losing it. I want to say, of course, because he's 6 and he doesn't even know what to do with all this, because kids that are under age 10 to 11, 12ish, they don't even have the development to deal with this. So they literally go through it twice. I hate to say, it's like it's circling around them until they become developmental to even handle this, right? So we went through it twice for him. And so my job, and my only job, and I learned this, was to just calm down and teach them how to stay in peace when they started to get upset. Think about this. If all of us knew how to do this when we got upset, is just to bring ourselves back to peace and a place of rest, and to just take a deep breath, how much better is everybody going to be? They will be, right? It's never a teachable moment when you're in the middle of something like that. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from that for your home, and if you're a mom, when your kids get upset, just love them to calm down and say, look, I love you and we will get through this, but let's just calm down, and teach them that. It's so very important. And if you don't know, reach out to either one of us, and I'm sure we can walk you through that process. But it is so valuable, okay? There's 4 steps to what we do. It's peace, then trust, then relationship, which is the love walk, and then learning how to walk with God on this earth. It's pretty powerful through his word. But I am a faith-based program, by the way, but anybody can participate in this and get a lot out of it. So it doesn't matter what you believe. We take anybody that needs help, all right? But getting that person back to peace immediately, and then absolutely it's a teachable moment you want to talk about later, because children are in fight or flight, and so are people when they're upset. All the blood is in the back of their brain. It's not in the frontal lobe where you learn. Okay. So it's not the time. And see, you can actually get peaceful and in a loving way sit down and teach your child, say, let's talk about what happened the other day and let's reframe it and talk about what we can do in the future, maybe different so we have a better outcome. And see, it's just those one little baby steps, step by step, day by day. And my son's now turning 19. Are we perfect? Not even a little bit. But we're doing a lot better. And he's holding down a job. He's got his own apartment. I mean, I think he's doing pretty good for 19. He's got a year of Bible college under his belt and is holding down a full time job. So we're making it. And he's part of the
That's
family.
amazing. Congratulations to him, especially with, to grow up and work through all of that. Sometimes it doesn't turn out that way, and it's hard. I mean, I remember I like what you said, the peace, like especially home. Like home for us was that, and unfortunately, part of my journey and part of my story is I've had to divorce my parents. I've tried many times to recreate that relationship with them. And just before Matt passed, I was recreating what I thought recreating the relationship with my mom. But I know why God did it. God did it because He knew when my mom passed, we were very blessed that she helped us pay for his funeral, and we were going to have to cremate him, and I just didn't in my heart want to do that. And I'm very blessed that my mom was able to help to do that, and so I honor and thank her all the time for that. And what happened afterwards, the behaviors coming right back in, I knew that God brought her back because He knew I was going to need that, and He knew what I wanted to give to Matthew, and I knew she wanted Matt to have that right way of send off and go up to heaven, and so I'm always very thankful. And unfortunately, it was also held against us afterwards, and
Yeah.
so on that journey to finding peace, like you said, like at one point, she was supposed to live with us, and then all these things happened. So I was just like, you know what, this is my home's my sanctuary. You can't be in my home if these are the behaviors you're going to have. This is just not going to be acceptable. And
Yes.
and it's so true. And the other thing too, like from I don't know if you had any of this with your son, but the other thing, like for Chuck and I, because they owned this business together, Matthew used to go in and take care of the heavy duty work for the business. So Chuck was having to do the heavy duty work because Matt had passed. And I remember he came home one day and I was like, "So how's your day?" And he was like, "Life." And it was like after everybody had gone, Matt passed in July. It was probably at like mid-September sometime. And he came home and he just said life. And I looked at him and I was like, okay, what? Let me just, as a coach, I was like, let me break this down in my head, life. And then I looked at him, I said, "You're missing Matthew." And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, okay, yes, and so then I could talk to him about it, so we have those moments, and and we'll talk about it, and have conversations, and things like that when those feelings come up, because even us, I'm like, I don't want to not talk about it, and so I love to do it. And then when you talk about the trust, like, I know there are people, including my husband, I can trust with my feelings. I can trust that I can live again. I can trust to do these things
Yeah.
that I was doing before. There's the before and there's the after, I'm sure, as you understand. And then, literally, I remember 2 days before Matt passed, he was here, and he was like, "Hey, Mom, will you throw me a bottle of water?" And I chucked the bottle of water to him. And he's like, "Wow, not only have you finally figured out who the heck you are and what you want out of life, but you can throw something." So I have that memory. Like, I worked hard. I didn't start
Yeah.
overcoming these, wearing my titles and being a people pleaser until, he was a senior in high school. So him and Nate both saw me like start to work on this stuff. And, I spent so much time taking care of navigating, Matt's journey and how he struggled with his journey of adoption, that it took away time from our son Nate, took away time for what we wanted. And, so I was like, I have to honor that memory, and I have to continue to showing up for me. And, like you said, I like what you said too, that second year is a marathon. That first year, like, I literally was like, I was just, I felt like I was just floating through. And then that second year, it was like, okay, I got to really push through. I got to, and so, leading into year 3 in July, I feel like, I actually told somebody today, I'm like, I feel like I'm never going to be back to what it was before, but I feel like I am back to where I did things like, so I love the horse therapy. And I know you and I have talked about I want to do a grief retreat. So we're going to definitely talk more about that. And so if you're listening, keep watching and listening. There's going to be more to come from this. But the other thing is, our son Nate, he got married in October last year, and Matthew, if he would have been here and got married, we would have done the smash dance and all that fun stuff. Nate's like Nate and his and my daughter-in-law Amy, they gave us a minute. They gave her dad and me like a minute and a half of the song, and I was like, we're done. It's like, what? So there was this beautiful dancing competition fundraiser thing for children's pediatric, and I was like, I'm going to do this in memory of Matthew for that mother son dance I'm never going to get. What actually, and he brought that, I know he brought that into my world, because now I'm still dancing and I'm loving
Oh,
it,
wow.
and I feel like I have my smile back. And so, like, what you said, that whole process, and like offering it up and loving God. I mean, I totally agree with you. I feel like he's got me on this journey, and I'm on this, and I know he's always been there, but now it's like, what else do you want me to do with this? And that's why I'm excited for what you're doing and how you're changing people's lives, and how I love horses. And I think I do believe that this is Matt because he loved horses, and so he got
Oh,
us all
that's
together
awesome.
on this. So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. But so I this our time's flying by. I'm just looking at the clock. So tell us, like, how does somebody reach out to you to get in your circle, to work with you, if they're hearing us and they're resonating, going, what, I've got a child that, I'm a widow. You may or may not have a child, but you're a widow and you want some help in this process that you've created, in this journey you've created with these beautiful horses. How does somebody reach out to you? What's the best way for them to do that?
It's really simple. Just go to angelsinthearena.com, angelsinthearena.com, and there's a contact button right there, right at the homepage. Click on that. Send me a little chat thing in there, and it'll hit my phone the second you send it, and I'll reach out to you. Or you can go to our Facebook page, Angels in the Arena, or Tracy Boone on Facebook as well. And then you also can email me, but I think the best way is go to the website because that will go straight to my phone and it's easy, right? You need easy when you're going through stuff like this. You don't need anything hard again. And there's a lot of wisdom when you've gone through something. There's a scripture that says he comes alongside you when you're going through a hard time. And then eventually he's going to equip you to come alongside others. And that's now what I do. And then we kind of come alongside. It's funny in the horse world, they'll put a horse that doesn't know how to do something with another horse that does, say to do a round, in a circle, the round pen, and they'll tie them together and they'll teach, one horse will teach the other and come alongside. They literally call it that. And so in that same spirit of that is we do the very same thing when people are going through hard times, or they're just trying to figure out how to have a relationship with God. How do I do this? I that is a very big piece of this as well. So it doesn't have to be just grief or trauma. Maybe you're just trying to find your way in this world. And how do I do that? And that's the easiest way to reach us, though, is angelsinthearena.com.
Angelsinthearena.com. I just love that. I just love,
Very simple.
just so beautiful. I can't believe our time's running by. So let me ask you this
I know.
question. I think we have
Yeah.
a couple minutes we can unpack this. If somebody is, they're listening to us and they have a little one, and they're, I watched, I can't remember what the show was. I watched, oh my gosh, I wish I could think of what it was called. My husband and I just watched it last week. It was about the lady, she met a chef in Italy, and he moved back to the States, and he ended up passing away of cancer, and the therapist was there, and it's on Netflix right now. I can't remember the name of it, but the therapist came to talk to the mom and said, you, like what you said about your son, you have to just put it in, you got to be straight, you got to tell them exactly, because they're scared as much as it is. So if there's a mom that's listening right now that has, their little one, and maybe they're getting ready to go into the journey, what's one thing you would tell them to do right now?
Definitely establish your relationship with God if you don't have one, and allow Him to lead you through it. Um, but to be very honest, not too honest with your son, but keep peace in the home so they can trust you. And, their world is kind of unraveling. So if you can be that beacon, that mainstay right there, and then just so you know, you can teach I'm helping a family right now with a 4-year old. Started working with him with the 3-year old, and this family is battling brain cancer with the dad. And the little boy, his faith is growing. There's no age that's too soon to teach them so they can be at peace with God too, which is the cornerstone of what we do. Because if they know that there's somebody bigger that's looking out after them, and how do I do that? They can even learn it at 3. It's amazing. So, but it's one step at a time, and come alongside somebody that you can trust to help you through this.
That's so
If
beautiful.
amen.
Great advice. Great advice. All right, so I'm going to take us off on a higher of a little bit of a higher note here. We have our better questions, better life cards. I already forewarned Tracy. I'm going to shuffle them. You're going to tell me when to stop, and we're going to see what
Okay.
your question is. Here we go.
All right. Okay. Stop.
All right, so yours says, "What am I doing to pursue my passion?" What are you doing to pursue your passion?
Well, what am I doing? I'm in the middle of not only published our book, and we have groups and individual sessions, and literally doing exactly what I experienced, and we're helping people through on the other side. But I'm also developing the actual program and the work, so I can duplicate this all around the world. So if you have horses and you have a relationship with God and you want to learn how to help people do what I do, I'm duplicating this all over the world so people can do that very thing. So that is basically what I'm doing every day.
Yay. I love it. That is so amazing. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing your family with us and helping to inspire others that, we're not alone in this journey, no matter what. And
A little bit.
no matter what's happening in your life, there's always somebody that can walk beside you and hold your hand. And so I just want to thank you again for coming and we'll put everything out there so you guys can reach Tracy. Everything will be in the show notes. But in the meantime, I just want to remind you that if you haven't subscribed or liked us, please do so below. We're on all the platforms, so YouTube, all the listing channels. Share us with a friend, and if you want to reach out to us for anything that we've touched your heart today, let us know. And also, we have, you've heard me talk about it, but we have our Keep It Simple Sure program that we have launched. And if you want to learn more about how to live your life without guilt and have no more of those midnight wake up worries, just click the link below and I'll send you the information to live that life without guilt. But just remember, you come into this world, we are a rough shell on the outside. There's a lot of work we have to do. But as you break open that shell, you will find your inner pearl of greatness. And I hope you go out and be the Shira that you are today. Thanks so much for joining. I just want to thank Tracy today for being vulnerable and for sharing her story. And, for those of us and those that are listening that have gone through this journey of your own grief, everybody grieves differently, and we have different ways we work through it. I just want you to know, like Tracy and I shared today, you're not alone. You can walk beside somebody who's been on the journey as well. You can reach out to me. I would love to help you. But I want to just to remind you that peace is one of the things that really struck with me out of this conversation today. And peace can be something that we all need to practice, not just if we've lost somebody or grieving, but there's different things that we grieve in our life. It could be relationships that we've had to divorce from. It can be friends. It could be relatives. It could be even like a job or something that you've done that you've had a passion for. And just know that if you can bring yourself back to peace, that's where everything starts to help your journey of healing and learning how to continue to live the life that you're meant to be. And I know you're meant to be a strong, happy, empowered, radiant, and original person and to be that Shira that you are today. So thank you so much for joining us and Soulful Self Care Conversations. Have a great day.
Why'd it take